Hi, this is Helena, and from time to time, the Crocoblock support team gets requests to help with non-standard filtering setups in JetSmartFilters. And while the plugin already offers a powerful set of filtering tools, some projects call for more niche and creative solutions, particularly in the area of visual filtering. So, in this video, I want to show you a way to implement your most ambitious and unusual filtering systems using our free add-on for JetEngine and JetSmartFilters. This method doesn't have the usual limits of shape, size, or other visual stuff you normally run into with standard filters. The process, in my opinion, is much easier than it seems from the title of this video, but the results are truly impressive. You will need JetEngine plugin, JetSmartFilters plugin, and the free JetEngine Listing as Filter add-on that can be downloaded from GitHub. The link is in the description. Also, this functionality is available for Elementor only now, so you will need Elementor, free or pro, it doesn't matter. If you prefer a text version of this guide, there are 2 articles in our blog and the links will be under the video as well. I will show a simple case for using a listing template as a filter and a complex advanced case that also has post-relation SQL query and meta fields. Here are the results you can get. This is the simple case, and here you actually see 2 loop or listing templates, one for taxonomies, which acts as a filter, and the second is a normal listing template, which gets filtered. And here is the advanced case. You have 3 listing templates where 2 of them act as filters, so you can get results on the 3rd template. It's a loop template but only with 1 item. And you can see that the traveling time is changing as well as the map pins when I choose different objects in these 2 listings. Pretty impressive, right? So let's get started. Let's start with a simple case. Actually, similar cases can be easily implemented just with a visual filter type by JetSmartFilters. However, I will use it for demonstration purposes, not to overcomplicate things. But for your websites, you can use this logic, but more sophisticated layouts if needed. This is where the method becomes particularly useful. I've created a post type called transport, just as usual in JetEngine post types, with a couple of custom fields. Also created a taxonomy for it in JetEngine taxonomies add new, and here choose the transport post type. If you want it to act as a category, not a tag, choose hierarchical in the advanced settings tab. Here I've added a custom field for a taxonomy thumbnail. You can see these images here on the front end. Of course, you can add more fields if you want to display more of them in your listing, which will act as a filter. Then I've added a few posts in the transport post type and a few categories with a couple of posts in each. As you can see, I've added images in the custom field to represent each category. The description is a default field, so I've added small descriptions as well. Now let's create 2 listing templates to display all transport items and their categories. Go to JetEngine Listing/Components, and here in the source, you can either select post, then transport post type, and then the builder you prefer. Or alternatively, you can first create a query where you specify what exactly will be shown, the pagination, sorting, specific conditions. There are a lot to choose from, and then choose this query as a source. The 3rd option is a mix of the 2 previous. First, create a listing with a post source, and then use a custom query toggle, select the query, and apply it to the listing template. This latter option is the most convenient if you want to reuse your listing templates with different queries. Anyway, what I wanted to say here is that JetEngine gives you a lot of options, but if you want to learn more about building loop templates, check the video in the description. Also, as I said before, you can choose one of these builders to create your loop template. Even if your main builder is different, you can choose another builder to create a loop. For example, you are building your pages with Elementor, but you can choose Tweak or Block Editor for listings. They are also Bricks and Divi compatible with JetEngine, but you don't see them here because they are not installed. I've already created my template using Tweak. Of course, you can use any other builder. But why Tweak? It's a really good option here, but I guess it's somehow underrated by JetEngine users. However, it's the most lightweight option with the cleanest DOM structure possible. And with the recent vibe coding trend, it's easy to ask AI to build an HTML structure for your loop template with some CSS, and then you can insert dynamic data using this button. For example, I want to insert the meta field here, a field called price. So I just select it from the drop-down, and here I have this little twig markup that pulls out the price. I can also apply filter callbacks if needed. It's a huge list of them here. For example, format it as a number. Let's create a loop template for categories using Twig as well. Choose terms as a source, transport types term, and here I've already added my HTML and CSS. Let me show how to pull the dynamic data. For the thumbnail, it's dynamic data, metadata, and then a callback getFileById. So I get this image rendered. For the category name, it's term, name. For the description, it's term, description. Again, you can use any other builder for creating your listing templates. It's up to you. Okay, all the preparations are done. Let's proceed to setting up a filter. Let's create a filter in JetSmartFilters, add new filter type, select data source taxonomy, and choose the transport types taxonomy. That's it. Save the filter. Now let's create a page and using the listing grid widget, add the transport types listing template. Here it is. You can leave it like this or turn it into a carousel. This will be our filter. And let's add one more listing grid, but now with the transport listing template. This one will be filtered. And the final part is to turn this transport types widget into a filter. Because I have my free listing as filter add-on activated, I can see this additional section in the listing grid settings. So activate the listing as filter toggle. In the select filter, choose the one you've just created in JetSmartFilters for taxonomy. Filter type single select. This filter for choose JetEngine. Apply type Ajax. Apply on value change. And it's very important to type the query ID. Query ID in our case is the ID of the container to be filtered. This is the container, and let's add the ID. Open the Advanced tab and type any ID in the CSS ID field. I will type transport. Copy it and paste it in the query ID field in the listing that will work as a filter. That's it. Let's see how it works. It works perfectly well. I have 2 items in each category and can see them filtered. So this is how this simple case works. And yes, it works with taxonomies, not all types of filter sources. If this is what you need, go ahead and design your listing that will act as a filter the way you want. You can add a few more fields, any media including videos and so on to get visually appealing filters. Let's move on to the advanced case. It has post relations, meta field connected to them, and the SQL query using the query builder by JetEngine. I think this method will be particularly interesting for those who love custom development and have some experience in this field. But first, let's have a closer look at the results to understand what data we deal with. We have 3 listings here. 1, 2, 3. 2 of them work as filters for the 3rd listing. Here you can see 5 fields that change dynamically when I click my filters. The first 2 fields are the names of the property and attraction. They are titles of the property post type and the attraction post type respectively. And the remaining three fields, walking time, driving time, and public transport, are the meta fields attached to the relation. And the map is simply showing the locations of the two selected posts, of the selected property and the selected attraction. Let's start building. So I've created two post types, properties and attractions, using JetEngine post types, and added a few records to each post type. Here I have some properties and some attractions. After doing it, go to JetEngine, Relations, and add a new relation between properties and attractions. I've already created one, and this is what I have here. Name of the relation, parent object properties, child object attractions, relation type many to many, so we can connect as many properties to one attraction as we want, and vice versa. Register control for parent object and register controls for child object, so you can edit relations from both post types. You can also register a separate database table for better performance if you plan to add many records. And now we will add something that is used not that often, but it's an extremely powerful feature in some cases. We will add meta fields not to a particular post type, but to a relation. So when we connect a certain attraction to a specific property, we can put the information that is only needed for their combination. I will show you an example in a minute. Here I've added three fields: walking time, driving time, and public transport. Simple text fields. So when I connect two items using this relation, I can write the travel times in these fields. Save the relation and let's get back to our properties and attractions. For example, let's open a Times Square attraction. I have already filled in the address and coordinates field. We will need them to show things on a map. And down here you can see this section for adding related items. Click the Connect Properties button and you will see a list with all the properties. I will choose the apartments in Stewart House, Connect, and these are my fields where I will put the travel time from Times Square. Now connect the rest of the properties and fill in the travel time from Times Square to each of them. Repeat the same for the rest of the attractions posts. And you can definitely edit such connections and fields from the properties side because it has the same editor there. Now let's create listing templates for properties and attractions in JetEngine Listing/Components. I've already created them. You just display a title, a fields you want to display, so it's a simple task. That's why I will not pause here. Next, we will add two filters with the JetSmartFilters plugin. These filters run in the background and are used in the listing as filter settings on the front end. Also, the selected values get passed into our SQL query through macros, and I will explain exactly how it works in the next step. For now, let's create the first one and name it Attractions. Set it up like this: filter type select, data source manual, but leave the options empty. We are not adding choices by hand because the attractions listing itself will act as a source of selectable items. Query variable. This can be any word you like. It's just a label. I will type attraction. Keep that word in mind because we will use it later. Save the filter and add the identical filter for properties. I will call the query variable here properties. We will get back to these filters a bit later. Okay, so we have two post types, properties and attractions, that have relations, and each relation has meta fields for travel time, walking, driving, and public transport. Our goal is to fetch these values from the database. So we need the Query Builder tool by JetEngine, obviously, but which query type to choose? If I choose the relations query type, I can retrieve related posts of the current parent or child. But my case is different. I need to fetch only the meta field values for each pair of attraction plus property, for each connection, in other words. That's why we need the SQL query type. Choose it from the drop-down here, give it a name, and it's extremely important to add a custom query ID here, because this ID will glue together filters, listings, and this particular query. I will type relations query. Next, choose the advanced/AI mode and paste this SQL query. The link is in the description. As the comments say here, replace the relation ID with the relation ID you have for your items. It can be found in the URL address when you open the relation. Mine is 16. Yours will be different. Also, you need to replace meta field names with whatever field names you have. You can find them in the relation as well. Mine are walk time, drive time, and public transport. Yours will have different names. After you've done that, save the query. What you can also change here is the fallback values. Without them, these areas will be empty until you choose something. But if I have fallback values, I can see something already. In my case, Times Square and luxury apartments shown here by default, as well as the travel time for them. These fallback IDs are the IDs of the property and attraction you want to have by default. First comes the parent object ID, which is property, and second comes the child object ID, which is attraction. In my case, I want to see the luxury apartments property, the ID is 1030, and I want Times Square as a default attraction, the ID is 1028. Update the query and it's ready to be used on a front end. But before we move on, I want to briefly explain the structure of this SQL query in case you'd like to build something similar yourself. For example, you can use the built-in AI tool to generate it. However, there's one important thing to keep in mind. Your prompt must include all the relevant IDs, field names, and database table names. AI can guess those values, and they are essential for generating a working query. So let me give you a quick breakdown on how this query is put together. Let's look at lines from 5 to 10 here. The select statement specifies the columns to be retrieved in the result set. It selects the ID, parent object ID, and child object ID columns, as well as the meta value column, namely walk time from M1 table, drive time from M2, and public time from M3. What are those M1, M2, and M3? They are aliases for database tables because we have all our data stored in one physical table. This one, JetRel default meta. And because I need to perform 3 runs through the same database to get walk, then drive, then public time values, it's compulsory to treat it as 3 different tables and use such aliases. As a result, we have only one table. It's being treated as 3 different tables. To make things more visual, let's open a database. I use the free SQL Buddy plugin. Here I can see the JetRel default meta table. If you choose the separate table in your relation settings, you will have your relation ID here instead of the default word. So lines from 11 to 15 say that I took data from this table, I list as M1, and added the data from the same table on the second run, I list as M2. Inner join is used here. It means that we combine 2 database tables that have matching values in both of them and specify the column that should match. And the expression you see on line 13 means that in both M1 and M2 tables, the parent object ID must match, and in both M1 and M2 tables, the child object ID must match as well. To join a third table, I have to perform the inner join again, which is why we have the M3 alias. As a result, we have the walk time, drive time, and public time values retrieved for unique combinations of the property ID plus attraction ID pairs. Finally, let's break down the lines from 17 to 22. Line 17 says that all these queries should be performed only for the property attraction relation, not for all the relations existing on the website. That's why the relation ID is specified here. As I've already mentioned, you should replace it with your own relation ID. The next three lines specify the meta fields within this relation. And now the fun part. If we stop here, the lines 21 and 22 don't exist. The query will give us the data about all the existing pairs and their travel time at once. But we don't need it. We need the data only about the selected pairs. That's why the last two lines use macros that show the IDs of whatever items the user has selected right now. So how to know which items the user has selected? Using filters, of course. Do you remember from the simple case that we actually use JetSmartFilters to work in the background and power up our listing as filter functionality? And we've already created two filters, properties and attractions with query variables. So this part and this part are macros that pass the values from the clicked items to the SQL query. How did I create these macros? Using the JetEngine Macros generator. It can be found here. Choose the JetSmartFilter query, type metafield, variable name property for the parent macros and attraction for the child one, but they must be the exact words from the corresponding filter's query variable. Result format, plain. Fallback, I've already discussed the fallback IDs, so here we just put the IDs of the post that we want to be default. And here you can see the macro, just like we have in our SQL query. And of course, there are more macro types and settings for them that you can use in your custom development, so check them out. Well, I hope the logic behind this query is clear now. So it's time to move on to our final step and create the listing template that will be filtered by another two listing templates, and it's based on our SQL query. I've already partly created this listing template to save some time, so I will explain how it works and which fields it has. The listing source, query builder. Select the SQL query we've just created. Now for the fields that show the selected property and attraction, you can use two methods. The first one is the dynamic field. Then in the object field, choose the query we use here and the parent object ID. It will return the ID, obviously, so go to Filter Field Output, Callback, get post page title by ID, and now we have a proper name. Repeat the same for the attraction, but choose the child object ID instead of the parent. However, we have a map here, and it needs a little bit of customization to get the coordinates properly. But if you don't have a map, you can just skip this method. However, it's very cool. So this method uses custom context for our items. Context is a powerful thing that filters the dynamic data output. And JetEngine already has quite a long list of options, but you can create a custom one for your particular case. JetEngine has the development documentation and hook references. Check the link in the description and the dedicated document on creating a custom context. However, for this case, the code already exists. Check the link below and let's add it to the website. It's a PHP code, so add it using a snippet plugin or to your functions PHP file. Now reload the page and you will see two new options in the context dropdown: parent property and child attraction. Now I can use the Elementor icon box widget to display items. For the property, I choose current object field, title, and the parent property context. For the attraction, the same, but the context is child attraction. For the travel time, add a dynamic field and choose the walk time field from the query section, and repeat the same for driving and public transport. You can add icons and text before and after and format this field the way you want. Finally, the map. I use the Advanced Map widget by JetEngine here because it supports dynamic values and context very well. So here I have the basic map settings with center coordinates you paste manually with the styling. The dynamic part comes in the pins section. Address type, coordinates, and for the dynamic value, choose the current object field and the post status field. Then choose the parent property context. Why post status? Just because the custom code we've added uses this object field to pass the coordinates meta field. It's just a trick to simplify the data access. Repeat the same for the second pin, but choose the child attraction context. Finally, let's show the titles dynamically in the pin address and pin description. Choose the current object field, title this time as we just need a title, and the right context. Parent property for the property and child attraction for the attraction pin. We're done here. Create a page and let's put things together. First, the listing we've just created, the one to be filtered. Use the listing grid widget and choose it from the drop-down. But there is only one item in this listing, so choose column number 1. Next, add the listing template for properties and for attractions. We've created them in the very beginning. Now let's make everything work. Go to the Properties settings, activate Listing as Filter toggle, and select Filter Properties. Do you remember we've created a simple filter with a manual source type and a query variable earlier? This filter for JetEngine, filter type Single Select, apply type Ajax, apply on value change. Now the most important thing here is the query ID. We need to take it from our SQL query and paste it here. Relations query in my case. This query is the basis of the listing template that will be filtered. That's why it works for the filter. Also, it's compulsory to add the same query ID to the listing grid container in the Advanced tab, CSS ID. Add the same settings to the Attractions listing grid. The query ID you paste in the listing as filter settings should be the same, Relations query in my case, because they are both filters for the third listing. Save the page and let's test. It works perfectly well. Thank you for your time, happy building, and join us in the next video.